کاوش مدیا.
The Biden administration has simply taken up Trump's position on Iran. The rhetoric is slightly different, but if you look at the actual policy, there's very little daylight between them.
Yeah.
The facts are uncontroversial that the United States pulled out of the agreement, actually in violation of Security Council orders, if anybody cares about such trivialities, and imposed very harsh sanctions on Iran with zero justification, and then says we'll only return to negotiations if Iran initiates it and agrees in advance that we're not going back to the joint agreement, the JCPOA, but only to a much harsher agreement. That's basically the facts. Biden's continued with them, no change. A little different rhetoric.
Yeah, the rhetoric is different. The claimed desire to enter into a nuclear agreement is there, but I don't see the carrot for Iran.
Well, Trump was also willing to enter into a nuclear agreement, as long as it was a much harsher one.
Yeah, much harsher one.
And Biden has said the same.
I didn't realize that Biden. I thought they were willing to go back to something close to the. I thought the sticking point was that Iran first has to stop doing what they've done in the last year or two.
That's part of it.
And Iran says we'll enter an agreement if we don't have to stop.
If you look beyond, but we're not going to go back to that agreement. It has to be one which deals with what they call Iran's terrorist activities, its missile programs, and many other things, which had nothing to do with the JCPOA. When U.S. intelligence describes to Congress the threat of Iran, what they say is, if they're developing nuclear weapons, which we don't know, it would be part of their deterrent strategy. Who doesn't want a deterrent strategy? Countries that want to rampage freely in the region. There are two of them, United States and Israel. That's the threat of Iran.
Okay. It is true that, in fact, indeed, historically, it looks like precisely that case. That's what bothers me about this whole approach in general, is that it's very, very logical for countries to want to have to develop nuclear weapons, because history suggests to us that countries that have nuclear weapons are not invaded, and countries that don't have nuclear weapons are invaded.
Well, but you see, that aside, we don't have any indication that Iran's trying to develop nuclear weapons. Very likely they're trying to develop nuclear capability. Mm-hmm. Means you're close to it. If you have to, you can turn a screw. Mm-hmm. Half the countries in the world have that. If you have nuclear energy these days, you're not that far from nuclear mm-hmm. weapons. So probably they want to have the option of developing nuclear weapons if the situation arises, and they would be a deterrent to countries that are attacking them all the time. The U.S. is at war with Iran. The U.S. cyber attack against Iran is what the Pentagon calls, in its official documents, war that justifies a military response. So yeah, we're openly at war with Iran. We're proud of it. We boast about it. Obama was very proud of it. Israel, of course, is proud of carrying out assassinating Iranian nuclear engineers, destroying facilities, and killing people anywhere they want. It's not a secret, and there's no indication that Iran is going beyond an effort probably to develop nuclear capability, but the U.S. and Israel don't want that, because they don't want deterrence. They want subordination. And this is not just the Middle East. This is U.S. policy everywhere. Yeah. Why have we been viciously attacking Cuba for 60 years? The sanctions are murders. And of course, they're made particularly savage by the Trump administration, but kind of that's their hallmark. Let's kick everybody in the face when we can. And it's right in the middle of pandemic. So it's preventing Iran from getting vaccines, from dealing with the pandemic. The idea is to make the population suffer as much as possible. I mean, I don't have to tell you, sanctions regimes hit the population. They don't hit the leadership.
Yeah,
They're
sure.
fine.
Yeah. And the idea is to foment rebellion from within by making it so miserable that they hopefully will. That's the plan anyway. But now, given that
I think it's interesting to look at the historical record. So take the case of Nicaragua, very well documented. The first Bush administration very openly and explicitly informed the Nicaraguan people when the election was coming up in 1990 that either you vote for our candidate or we'll make life miserable for you. We'll continue the terrorist war. We'll continue sanctions. You won't be able to survive. Okay, they voted the way the United States wanted. Take a look at the press afterwards. The New York Times, my favorite, headlines, "Victory for U.S. fair play." I mean, that's the country we're in.
آنچه در مورد ما میگویند